I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're speaking with Dr. Terence Dorn. He is an expert in security studies and technological threats. He's diving into the intricate landscape of unmanned systems in his thought-provoking work, a book called Unmanned Systems, Savior or Threat. With an extensive background in analyzing emerging technologies, the doctor scrutinizes the evolving realm of unmanned aerial, surface, and undersea systems, unraveling their potential to either safeguard or imperil national security. We're delighted to have the doctor join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Good River Print and Media for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support writers like him by subscribing to our channel. Doctor, thanks so much for being our guest today on Spotlight.
Thank you, Mr. Crawford, and your team for having me.
Absolutely. Glad to have you. This is a fascinating subject. There are satellites all around. There are drones all around. It seems like they're ubiquitous at this point. Artificial intelligence, most people have seen at its entry point what it's capable of by using ChatGPT. So this could be a very lethal combination when it comes to warfare, when it comes to terrorism, when it comes to threats that we haven't even conceived of yet.
You're absolutely correct. And a few years ago, DJI, which is a Chinese firm, decided to start building what you call drones. They did that, and they very quickly captured 77% of the global market for small unmanned aerial systems. Now, all of that sounds good. If you're a hobbyist, if you have a grandson, you want to take little Billy over there and fly over something and show him how to use it, that's fantastic. Problem is that people like ISIS said, we can use it also. We can use it for surveillance. And with a little bit of a modification here, we can drop explosives on people. So everything you described, I agree with. However, there's great potential for use, and there's great potential for misuse. And that's what we have.
If Amazon can deliver packages and drop them at your doorstep, ISIS can deliver bombs and drop them at your doorstep. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's a horrible thought, but that could happen. Like you said, with a little modification, these drones are easily weaponized. And it doesn't seem like they're very well supervised or regulated right now either.
Well, don't say that to the FAA. If you do, you'll never board another airplane. In the United States, the FAA is king. They have a number of initiatives. They're all well-intentioned. And I'm not trying to be funny here, but you can get around regulations. You can get around software and hardware fixes. I could go into detail, I won't, but you can build your own UAS in your basement, which means that it won't have the regulatory software or hardware that the FAA says all new unmanned aerial systems must have. So you can go around it just by building your own stuff. There are a couple instances, I'll save it for later, but a couple people, namely in Pennsylvania, decided to use, again, DJI drones for nefarious purposes. So what they did was they took the nomenclature, the data plate off, took the video camera off. All they had left was a little piece of plastic with some propellers, and they went and did bad things with it. The law enforcement ended up catching the drones when they landed, and they could not trace them back to the owner. So even if you buy something that the FAA and the federal government says this is now certified for use, you can take off all the things that are supposed to make it safe and adhere to laws and regulations, et cetera, et cetera. It's very easy to do.
It seems like the genie is out of the bottle. What do we do? I mean, like you said, the FAA has a lot of regulations in place. They seem like they're not working. The potential for disaster is there. So do you have any proposals as to how we could make society safer by, getting a handle on these systems, whether made in someone's basement or purchased on the internet?
Only because I like flying to see my mother in St. Louis, I'm going to disagree with you and say the FAA is doing a great job.
Okay.
I'll never get on Southwest Airlines again, I can assure you. They have a number of things that they're doing, but as I said, as great as those ideas are, as well intentioned, you can't keep people from being evil,
Right.
from doing bad things, from figuring out how to go around regulations, how to go around hardware, software. You can't stop that. So I think the only thing you can do is empower your law enforcement agencies. And a few years ago, the FBI stood up what they called was an emerging threats division. I worked with them because I was at DHS. Very bright people, but you have to give them the resources, the people, and the allowance to go do what they have to do. Bad people sometimes, they telegraph their moves, they say something, they put their little nonsense on Facebook and say, I'm going to go do something bad. But by and large, the ones we have to worry about, I believe, are not the ones that are going to announce their intentions and telegraph their motives with some kind of announcement on Facebook or other social media. So law
Are,
enforcement is the key.
are defensive weapons that could easily shoot down these drones or incapacitate these drones, are they needed by local law enforcement, for example? If, who hasn't been to an event nowadays at a stadium or something, and you hear what sounds like a giant mosquito buzzing by your head, and there's a drone there, and it's not supposed to be there, and it's probably somebody just getting some video of the crowd, but like you said, it could be somebody with bad intentions as well.
Well, I think that right now, and I don't want to speak for law enforcement because I'm not associated with them, but by and large, they're looking at crowds.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have someone staring at his cell phone or doing this on a cell phone, which is to say, he could be FaceTiming his girlfriend, yes. Right. He could also be controlling a drone that's going overhead, as you described.
Right.
So right now, that's one of the best ways of catching people. I don't call that proactive. I call that reactive. But you mentioned technologies, and there's a number of them. There are a number of systems that look like a rifle and emit an electronic shot, which is to say they jam what they shoot at. They disrupt the electronic signals, and usually it comes straight down to the ground because you've essentially fried its circuit cards. But you can't use that in downtown DC. Right. Because the minute you use a jammer, some poor guy who has a pacemaker could fall down on the sidewalk because it's not working. The ATM was giving you the money you asked for, now it stopped. The cell phone that you're on a call talking to your wife about an operation or something, all of a sudden that drops. So there are all kinds of implications, and you can't shoot guns in the air, you can't shoot laser beams in the air. Again, this is very hard to do. There are defensive systems that they've developed, like a very large drone that shoots a net and captures, if I can call it, the offensive drone that might be overhead, transitioning downtown in an area it shouldn't be flying. But those are usually very slow, and they usually miss more than they hit and capture the offensive drone. So there is no set answer for your question. And it's a great question, Mr. Crawford. But my best answer is, again, law enforcement. And it has to be a system of systems. And that is to say, you track it, and you can backwards look at where it probably took off, which is where you would send law enforcement. You can also watch it in the air, and you can watch it when it lands, et cetera, et cetera. There is no set system, and I wish there was. If anybody comes up with that, they will be very wealthy.
Absolutely. The implications in war are great. I mean, for a lot of years, people have felt, why do soldiers have to go out there and do battle hand to hand or close to it? Now we do have drone warfare that is pretty much commonplace. We're seeing it recently deployed in the Ukraine war with Russia, or the Russia war with Ukraine, depending on how you phrase it. What are the implications of using unmanned aerial systems in warfare like this?
It's one of the chapters in the book you mentioned earlier where I talk about legal. And I think, and I'm not trying to be cute here, I think it depends on who the president is and who the legal advisors are to the president, for example. So I think any president or any premier, prime minister, anyone can find a legal JAG officer, judge advocate general officer, who will agree with their wants and desires. So, for example, many years ago, Turkey said, please, US, sell us your Predator drones. We need them. We have to have them. And the US said, no, we're not going to, because we think you're going to use them against the Kurds in the east.
Mm.
And the Turks said, no, we won't, we promise. And the US said, we're not going to do it. So why am I telling you this? Because there was a very smart young Turkish man in a doctoral program in the US. And he heard this and he said, I'm going back to Mother Turkey.
Mm.
And he did. And he went to his father, who ran an automotive parts business, and he said, Dad, I want to change our business model. I want to make unmanned aerial systems. What he did, what his father and his company did, they have become world famous. They make the Turkish Bayraktar TB2 drone. Now, that might not be something that you're familiar with, but at the beginning of the Ukraine war, the TB2s are the ones that help the Ukrainians go find and blow up Russian equipment and slow down their advancement. So, you brought up Ukraine, and I'm not trying to be dramatic here, but that has turned into a test bed of technologies. So we have seen what unmanned aerial systems can do, and they've essentially stifled any offense that the Russians could muster for months now. We have now unmanned surface systems. So that thing that looks like a Sea-Doo that speeds on top of the water, maybe you've driven one before, they took something like that and turned it into an unmanned surface system equipped with a proximity fuse and a warhead. And they've used it against Russian naval vessels. They now also have come out with what looks like a 20-foot long undersea system. So if you can imagine a maneuverable submarine that sneaks up to naval vessels, rams it, and a huge explosion results. This is what we have in Ukraine now. And I hate to say it, but everyone predicted, including some great military leaders, that Russia would win the war within 2 weeks. They didn't. And Ukraine is showing exactly what they're made of. And that funny little comedian president that they have has demonstrated incredible leadership. And I got to tell you, I salute the people, what they are doing every day. They're coming up with innovative solutions, and they're beating back the Russians. And nobody, I believe, except for maybe the Ukrainians, would have predicted that 18 months ago.
You don't think it's because Russia is showing restraint?
I don't know where they're showing restraint. They have called up all kinds of people. If you believe open sources, they've opened prisons, insane asylums. They put guns behind the people on the front line and say, go forward. If you turn around, I'll shoot you. This is open source reporting. The only thing they haven't done is use nuclear weapons.
Right.
And I hope, hope is not a method. I hope that doesn't come to fruition.
That would be
I truly believe that would cause NATO to get involved, because all of that radioactive material, with the winds being what they are, would blow over Europe.
Yeah.
And NATO would have to get involved.
And then we have World War III at that point, it seems like, right?
Well, let's hope it doesn't come to that.
Yeah, let's hope it doesn't come to that. Let's talk a little bit about the role of artificial intelligence and cyber when it comes to unmanned systems. I'd imagine this is going to be the new forefront.
That's a great point, and I don't think I could make it better than you just did. Okay. So if you can imagine an unmanned aerial system, a drone flying overhead, that's one thing. That's very simple.
Right.
If you can program through AI that system to do what you want at a time when maybe people aren't expecting it, imagine the autonomous capabilities advanced exponentially by AI aiding in whatever it is you want it to do. So, for example, they have what they call now machine learning. So not only does AI remember what you told it and how it did, but it learns. So the next time you say, let's do that mission again, or let's do that task, It does it more efficiently, more effectively, more quickly, because it learned and it remembered. It also is able to think, if I can use that uh, adjective to describe AI, it can think and say, I know what I'm being asked to do, and the human is telling me to go this way and then, swing left. I think I can get there quicker, better by navigating the course myself.
Right.
So it is a game changer.
Yeah.
If society doesn't understand the impact of unmanned systems, it will, because unmanned systems, AI, and cyber are now going hand in hand down the road. And unfortunately, we're seeing some good, but we're seeing a lot of bad examples. And cyber criminals, for example, I don't think that's going to end anytime in our lifetime, but they're very quickly figuring out how to use AI to get into more accounts, uh, more systems that are supposedly protected, and to steal. And that's what they're good at.
Well, imagine the implications of assassinations, political or military, if you use facial recognition and AI in an unmanned aerial system. I mean, so you could give somebody's description, somebody's pictures, somebody's data points of their face, and that drone could be on a mission to kill them for who knows how long. And how do you protect against something like that? I mean, so these implications are truly, truly frightening and profound.
Mr. Crawford, they're already doing what you described. So it is, again, open source. Israeli intelligence has teamed their UAS, their AI, and supercomputers into one mission. And the mission is, if we see or know of, again, faces, as you described, if we know of these 10 people running around Beirut, running around Lebanon, Hamas terrorists, if we see them, we will now track them. If we track them, we'll continue the surveillance. If they in fact start looking like they're procuring parts for a terrorist attack, we will engage them. So this is being done today. It's been done for a couple of years. It's just that the story didn't get out until fairly recently. Right. So this is being done.
And in the right hands, that's great. You're going to stop somebody from blowing up a school, blowing up a mosque, blowing up a temple. That's great. But unfortunately, it's not always in the right hands. And who's to say whose hands are right? I mean, look at the divide in this country now politically. One person sees red, the other sees blue, and they both swear to it, and they're both looking at the same thing. So one person's truth is different than another person's truth, and one person's criminal is another person's savior. So these are very, very complex times.
I didn't want to put any kind of adjective in what I described to you, because as you just said very well, the daughter of the Hamas guy who might be targeted would probably have a different view than the Israeli kids who maybe now weren't targeted, weren't shot, weren't killed.
Right.
So I put that aside. I'm merely stating that the technology has been used, is being used, and is here today. And if it saves lives, I'm all for it. Oftentimes it does come with a cost, but somebody told me, don't you have a problem with all these cameras, like at the airport, monitoring you, walking in and out of the airport, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, if I was doing something bad, I would have a problem with it. But I'm probably the least likely person on the planet to ever commit a crime.
Right.
So I don't have a problem with it, because I believe, and I'm sure everyone won't agree with this, but I truly believe that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. And that actually is a famous line out of a Star Trek movie, but it's very pertinent to the issue that you're discussing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a complex issue because civil libertarians for years would argue that we can't be monitored like this, we can't be tracked like this, we can't be traced like this. Now I don't know where the ACLU is. I really don't. On a lot of these issues, it seems like they're absent. In the 70s and 80s, they were very quick to defend people's right to talk and their right to free speech, even if they were talking about killing cops. But now when it comes to the most impactful infringement on our civil liberties there is, whether it's tracking us on social media or tracking us walking down the street, the ACLU seems to be quiet. But that's probably a debate for another day, a talk for another day. It seems, go ahead, you seem to have a thought you want to.
No, I was going to say, all you have to do is look at the United Kingdom. So back in the 60s and 70s, when the Irish?
Irish Republican Army?
There we go.
Yep.
I knew I forgot what they were called. When they were sending people in with bombs to shoot people and blow up stuff in downtown London, that frankly impacted people who were average everyday citizens and not lawmakers. I think what Britain did was they said, we're going to put cameras everywhere and we're going to look. I don't know if they had facial recognition back then to the degree that we obviously do today, but it helped curb what was rampant crime.
Yeah.
Crime as in, shooting somebody for no good reason just because you want to make a political statement, or blowing up something in a pub on a metro station. I have a problem with that personally. Yeah. But if UK did this and if it helped, I have to tell you, I'm a supporter.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, in the right hands, it's an amazing tool. It's going to save lives. It might have prevented the 9/11 hijackers from doing what they did. It might have spared the 9/11 tower collapse at the Trade Center. If this technology was in place then as it is now, and as it seems like it's going to be implemented. Talking about the misuse of unmanned systems, you seem, I mean, I'm not plugged into a lot of, military think tank groups, but it doesn't seem like there's too many people sounding the alarm here. You're one of the few. Tell us why you wrote this book and what you hope that people will gain from it, what society will gain from it.
I was in the Pentagon and was blown up on 9/11 and was blown up again in Kabul. So this is a rather personal thing with me. My father told me a long time ago that I was a good writer and I should get the word out, write about something that interests me that might be beneficial to others. So I've really tried to do that. If you look at international relations here, there have been numerous attempts, at least dating back to 2014, where unmanned aerial systems were used to attack a French nuclear power plant in 2014. In 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, they have been used to, at least attempted, assassinations of government leaders. Most of them failed, but somebody did get hit. Somebody did die, usually a security person. These were used to blow up and damage the large oil field and refinery in Saudi Arabia. Now, why is that important to Americans? Well, because it decreased the amount of oil on the market, which means prices went up. Now, the good news is all these little drones armed with explosives and the cruise missiles that carried them, there weren't enough of them to seriously damage the oil field and refinery. So within 2 weeks, all the repairs were made and the production of oil in Saudi Arabia went back up to its normal level. So everyone said, oh, okay, it doesn't really impact me. Well, it does impact people. And that was one attack. Imagine a coordinated attack where somebody goes after, for example, US power plants. The ability to send electricity across the US. Well, you talk about rolling blackouts. I think California went through that in the 80s or 90s. And then you haven't heard much about it. So I guess they solved their energy problem. But imagine that if you go after regional locations and you attack, and you don't have to blow up the plant. You don't have to attack the nuclear reactor that produces electricity. You just have to bring down those big metal things that have all the wires that take the electricity from the plant all the way to the cities. You bring those down and you've won. You've stopped electricity going from here to there. And I think a few blackouts like that, and people are going to be up in arms. And they're going to say, what is my government doing to protect me? What in the hell is this unmanned aerial thing? And why did my lights go out?
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like this country is very proactive. We just had a pandemic. If another pandemic were to strike, I don't think we're any better prepared now than we were in 2019. Seriously, unless it's COVID again and we have the shot, that may or may not be very effective. I think the jury's out on that. Um, I don't think we're more prepared in 2023 than we were in 2019, and that's frightening when it comes to these unmanned systems as well. Just for some background for our viewers who are listening to you, tell them a little bit about your work, your career, and your life in dealing with national security.
Well, my father was in the Air Force 30 years.
Mhm.
Um, I instead joined the Army. I think I was a little bit short of 30 years. And then I worked for a number of companies that have helped various federal agencies to improve national security. And I've given a presentation on the capabilities, which also coincides with the word threat posed by unmanned systems, to probably a dozen plus federal departments and agencies. At the end of all that, what people always ask me is, how do we counter this? And I have a couple answers that I give, but there is no single answer you can give. So a little while ago, an American company asked me if I would join the team to help the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia improve their security.
Mhm.
I don't think anybody really knows this in the US unless they work maybe in the State Department or DoD, but it's been about 8 years. Saudi Arabia has been attacked by drones and cruise missiles and ballistic missiles aimed from the south, from Yemen, for 8 years.
Hmm.
And you don't hear this because they very quickly go out, repair whatever was damaged, and then it's back up and operational as usual. And they also don't televise this, but they actually asked me. 5 generals sat in my interview and asked me to please come and help them. They said they wanted to learn and they needed help. So when I hear stuff like that, I automatically want to help
Hmm.
because I think that this is not, Terry Dorn running around saying the sky is falling. My hair's on fire, the sky is falling. But this is a real viable threat today, and it's being combined with AI. There are platforms that can use cyber also off of what we've talked about to attack you, your bank, your whatever. Uh, this is a real threat. I'm not trying to be um, anybody who says, come buy my book, look at me, listen to me. I'm just trying to educate people because I think through education, maybe you think about it a little more. Maybe you don't have the same password for 10 years,
Hmm.
which is stupid in this era of cyber attacks. Maybe you increase your awareness and you take steps to
And
reduce your
and
vulnerability.
hopefully a few years from now, people aren't searching for this video on YouTube for the soundbite from Dr. Terry Dorn, where he predicted what would happen did happen. And that's a frightening prospect, don't you think? Because it seems to happen. You go back and look at people talking about pandemics, it happened. You hear people talking about strikes against the World Trade Center, it happened. Using aircraft as missiles or weapons, it happened. If you think it might happen, it is a real threat, and you do have to take action. I'll just give you the final word, Doctor.
Our government is tasked to protect us, and that includes thinking outside the box. I wrote a subsequent book on U.S. critical infrastructure. So there's 16 sectors in the U.S. If you count up every facility, every manufacturing plant, everything, it is probably north of 30,000 facilities. There is no way that the U.S. federal government can protect 30,000 facilities. So it's incumbent on us to be aware, to take steps. And also, if we're an owner operator of one of those facilities, we have to ask the federal government, please allow us to get equipment to protect our people, our facility. So we are vulnerable, but the good news, in a sarcastic sort of way, is so is every other government on this planet.
Exactly.
That'll be my last word, sir.
Okay, and they're powerful words, and hopefully they fall on ears that are not deaf and people are listening. The name of the book is Unmanned Systems, Savior or Threat. It is written by Dr. Terence Dorn. It's an amazing look at security studies, technological threats, the emerging technologies that are taking place when it comes to the realm of aerial, surface, and undersea systems that have the potential to save our nation or imperil our nation. Dr. Dorn, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you, Mr. Crawford. Thank you and your people.
I appreciate it. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.